The water let him out into more water. That was the first wrong thing, before the body, before the sky. That dying was supposed to be a door you went through once, and instead the cold simply handed him on, one drowning to the next, the way a full pipe hands its water to the next pipe without asking whether the water is ready. He had gone down in a canal under a city, and he came up drowning in something else, some place with mud in it and reeds and the particular green rot smell of standing water that has forgotten how to move, and the lungs he woke into were already full. He did not think, "I am alive." There was no room in him for a thought that large. What there was the reflex. The thing 31 years under sinks and inside walls had ground into him, below the level of thought. A line is blocked. Clear the line. The body was on its back, half in the shallows, and the airway was full, and a person drowns because the water gets where the air belongs. So, roll it. He got it onto its side with arms that answered too slowly, thin arms, wrong arms, and pushed the swallowed pond out of it. Not a blow to a chest he couldn't have reached anyway, just the plain mechanics of gravity, and a fist set low and firm, water and bile and a thread of blood coming up in a long, ugly rope until the throat ran clear. Then the breath. That was the only real work, and it was the oldest work there was. He tipped the head back, opened the throat, forced the diaphragm down, and tongue dragged Otsorer into a chamber that hadn't wanted any in a while. Once, twice, the way you coax the first pull into a pump that's lost its prime, patient and stubborn. Give it a reason, give it somewhere to pull from. And on the third breath, something answered the pull. He could not have said what. There was a cold gathered low in the belly, well below the navel, deeper than the cold of the pond, and the drawn breath seemed to reach down past the lungs and tug at it, and the cold rose to answer. Not into his mind, he had no picture of it, only the body's dumb report of pressure, where a moment ago there was none, the way you know a tank has water in it by the weight when you tip it and not by seeing in. The pain arrived with it. It ran up both arms and forked across the chest along lines that felt fixed and specific and long-fouled, every one of them lighting as the cold tried to move and met the sludge of years, so that he learned the inside of the body the way pressure teaches you a system's faults. Here and here and here, all of it silted, all of it screaming. Somewhere under the ribs, a heart that had been fluttering at the edge of stopping felt the new weight behind it, and like a stalled pump, given something to push against at last, caught and held and beat. The body opened its eyes. For a while there was only breathing, and the reeds, and the pain, and the slow, terrible arithmetic of a man taking inventory of a house he has woken up inside of. The hand in the mud in front of his face was not his hand. It was younger and finer, and had never held a wrench in its life. The nails trimmed, the palm soft, a green jade ring on it worth more than his van. When he told it to close, it closed, slowly, obediently, wrong. He filed the wrongness and kept looking, because looking was the only thing that cost nothing, and because there was a shrine. It rose out of the far side of the pond in the last of a storm's gray light. Old stone, water black, a squat god house with a mask carved over its door, and beneath the mask a row of 9 dark gates going down into the water, like the teeth of something asleep. Even flat on his back, half drowned in a body he'd owned for 100 seconds, the shape of it reached into him and pulled, the way the good problems always had. A sluice. That was a sluice, or the corpse of one. 9 gates, and a channel, and the whole grammar of moving water, dressed up as a face to pray to. His hands wanted it before his mind knew why. Then a voice came across the water, and he understood he was not alone. It arrived first as pure sound, 2 soft syllables, an old man's shaking, and for one long beat it was only noise, weather, the pawn talking. Then the sound turned over in him and came up meaning the way a word does when you have no language, and he understood it, and understanding it was worse than not, because the meaning was a title, and the title fit the body like a key he hadn't known was cut for this lock. "Young master," the old man said again, "young master Shen, you were Shen." The body knew the word the way it knew how to close a hand. Some drowned residue in the meat of it flinched to attention at the name, the body snapping toward a posture the word had trained into it, spine first, chin next, nothing of Eli in it at all. And Eli understood, in the space of that flinch, a great deal. There were 2 of them at the pawn's edge, keeping well back, the way you keep back from a snake or a fire. A broad old man with a lantern and a coil of rope, and behind him a woman with her fist pressed to her mouth. They wore rough, undyed cloth and straw across their shoulders against the rain, and they were looking at him as though he were the worst thing that had ever happened to them. He read the rest of it off the way they stood, because he had spent his life reading systems by the way people stood near them. They were not afraid for him. They were afraid of him, and under the fear, for the length of a breath, before he had coughed up the pond, there had been something else, something that had briefly loosened their shoulders, and that they would now give anything to unfeel. Relief. He had drowned, and they had been glad. And gladness was a lethal thing to have felt about a dead lord. And now the dead lord was sitting up in the reeds with pond water on his chin, and every sum on those 2 faces had tipped, all at once, from "we are free" to "we are finished." Whoever Shen had been, he had been the kind of trouble that made poor people do arithmetic about their own survival. And Shen had drowned here, on their ground, at their shrine. And Eli did not need to know the law of this place to know that a noble found dead among peasants was a debt the peasants paid, in whatever coin the place ran on. He noticed then what the old man's eyes kept doing. They kept flicking, against their owner's will, to a place along the bank a little way off, to the mud there, where the reeds were bent and broken in a wide, flattened swath, and where a second set of footprints, bare and running, went up out of the water and away into the dark stand of reeds and did not come back. Someone had been here. Someone had been here at the wrong moment and had run, and the old man knew it and was not going to say it, and would rather look anywhere on earth than at those prints. Eli looked at them for exactly as long as it took to be certain of them, and then deliberately did not look at them again, and filed them where he filed the things that mattered most. He got his breath. He looked up past the shrine to find it, and he saw the sky. The storm was breaking apart overhead, cloud tearing off cloud, and in the rents between them the night showed through. And the night was wrong. Not wrong like a foreign country. Wrong like a foreign law. There were too many stars, and they stood in no order he had ever lain under. And low over the black line of the hills hung 2 moons, one large and bone pale and one small and the tarnished amber of an old coin. And he watched them a long time, breathing, and they did not resolve into cloud or grief or the trick of a rattled skull. They simply hung there, being true. Something in Eli Marsh, some last cord still holding him to the drowned body under a city, went quietly slack. He did not scream. He never did. Whatever the fracture had cost him, it had left him with a flat steadiness in the moments that should have broken him. A plumber's calm in a flooding room. He lay in the reeds of a world with 2 moons, wearing the drowned body of a man these people wanted dead, with a well of cold, untapped something, sitting low in a stranger's belly. And he thought, with the part of him that never stopped measuring even now, even here, All right, what have I got? What he had, he decided, was a choice he had already made, and he turned it over once in the cold to be sure he could live with it. He was not going to tell them the truth. Partly it was arithmetic. A man who wakes in a drowned lord's body and announces he is a foreign ghost gets to be a lunatic instead of a lord. And a lunatic on this ground would fare no better than the corpse they'd been so quietly glad of. But it was more than arithmetic, and he made himself say the rest of it plainly to himself, because he had never trusted a decision he hadn't looked at in good light. He was choosing the lie because he wanted to live. Whatever this Shen had done, and he'd done something. It was written in how the old man flinched, in the relief gone to dread, in a set of bare running footprints nobody would name. Eli had not done it, and he refused even now to pretend otherwise in the one room where it mattered, the inside of his own head. But he had woken up owning it. The way you inherit a house with the pipes run wrong behind every wall and find, guilt or no guilt, that the water is still coming into somebody's cellar tonight on your account. So he would keep the ruse. He would answer to the name because the name was the only thing standing between him and the reeds. And he marked in the same clear light what the wearing would cost. Every hour he answered to it, he was borrowing against a truth these people were owed, and that debt would not shrink for going unmentioned. He didn't know when it would come due. He set it on the scale anyway, so it would be there later. Then he made the useless arms work, and pushed the body up until it sat, swaying, and lifted the ringed hand, and the two of them went still as standing water. "Rope," he said. The voice came out of the raw throat low and wrecked, and unfamiliar even to him. He pointed at the coil, and then at the muddy bank above, and set the face flat and certain, the way he had for frightened animals and frightened men his whole life. "I can't make that bank alone. Help me up it, and whatever tonight was, I'm not asking. Nobody answers to me for it." He watched the words land, and he watched them fail to fit anything the two of them had ever heard. The old man's mouth had opened on the automatic young master and simply stopped. Whatever years he had spent in service to the house, whose name he kept saying, he had plainly never once had helped me, handed down out of it, nor my word, nor a promise offered downward, as though a peasant were a person a lord might owe. The woman's fist came slowly away from her mouth. Neither of them moved to the rope. They only stared, caught between a lifetime of obedience and the plain evidence of their eyes, at a drowned man wearing a hated face and saying impossible things under two wrong moons. And Eli saw that he had not bought their hands, not yet, had bought nothing at all except their bewilderment, and that the thing looking out of their faces was not trust, and was not even relief. It was the far edge of a question none of them had words for. What came back up out of the pond? They did not know. Neither did he. The old man came down the bank at last with his rope, because a lifetime of habit and a hard night's fear will move a man's hands where nothing else can, and not because he had decided anything. He did not run, and he did not forgive anyone, and he did not hope. He fixed his eyes on the mud, well away from the footprints running off into the reeds, and he reached the coil out at arm's length to the thing that had his young master's face, and he was more afraid that it had lived than he had ever, in one guilty, unspeakable instant, been glad that it died.